Here's what you're about to find out. Why seeing more ants at first is actually good news. The one mistake that secretly cancels the entire treatment. How to tell which bait your specific ants will actually take. Why a billion-dollar industry still can't beat a $1 mineral. 1 teaspoon of something you already own will clear an entire ant colony in 72 hours. No exterminator, no chemicals with 14-syllable names, no risk to your dog or your toddler. The Amish have been doing this for generations, and most people have never heard of it. In this video, we are going to walk through exactly how it works, why it works, and what you need to know before you try it. Because there are a few ways to do this wrong, and if you do it wrong, you will scatter the colony instead of collapsing it. We are going to make sure that does not happen to you. First, a little context. Ants are not a new problem. Every civilization in recorded history has dealt with them. The ancient Egyptians wrote about ant infestations near grain stores. Medieval European farmers tried everything from boiling water to ash rings around their foundations. None of it worked reliably. The problem is structural. Ants are a colony organism. You are not dealing with individual insects. You are dealing with a superorganism, a single biological system that can have hundreds of thousands of members, with typical colonies ranging from 20,000 to 100,000. Spraying what you can see on the surface does almost nothing. The queen is underground. The workers you see on your counter are just the outermost edge of something much larger. That structural fact is why most store-bought sprays fail. They are contact insecticides. They work great on the individual ant you spray. That ant stops moving. You feel satisfied. You put the can back under the sink. 3 hours later, a new trail has formed 2 feet to the left. What happened? The colony detected the loss of foragers in that zone and rerouted. Colonies do this automatically. There is no central brain making decisions. It is a distributed chemical signaling network. The colony adapts faster than most people realize. Spraying the visible trail is like trimming the branches of a weed. The root is still there, still growing. So what actually works? The Amish solution targets the root. It uses borax, a close relative of boric acid but a chemically distinct compound, mixed with a sugar bait. The ants carry it back to the colony themselves. They feed it to the queen. The colony collapses from the inside. This is not a new idea, but the Amish version of the recipe has specific proportions that matter enormously. Too much borax and the ants recognize it as a toxin and refuse the bait. Too little and it takes weeks with inconsistent results. The ratio that Amish households have passed down and that modern entomologists have since confirmed is roughly 1 part borax to 3 parts sugar dissolved in warm water. Borax itself is worth understanding for a moment. It is a naturally occurring mineral salt. It forms when water evaporates from seasonal lakes, places like Death Valley and the Mojave Desert in California, where it has been mined since the 1880s. It is used in laundry detergent, ceramic glazes, and as a wood preservative. At the concentrations in an ant bait, it is essentially harmless to mammals. A child or a pet would need to ingest a genuinely large quantity to have any ill effects, far more than they could ever encounter from a bait station. It disrupts the ant's digestive and nervous system at doses that mammals process without consequence. That gap in biological sensitivity is exactly what makes it work so cleanly. The Amish did not discover borax, but they developed a practical kitchen recipe at a time when commercial pesticides either did not exist or were too expensive to buy regularly. Necessity drove the formula. Amish households are also culturally motivated towards solutions that are safe around children and livestock. A method that required evacuating the house or keeping animals away from treated areas was simply not practical for a working farm family. So the recipe that survived and spread through Amish communities was the one that checked every box: cheap, safe, and genuinely effective when applied correctly. Those 3 things together are rarer than you might think. Here is the recipe exactly as it has been documented. You need approximately half a cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of borax, and 1 cup of warm water for a properly diluted liquid bait, roughly 1% borax concentration. That is the entire ingredient list. Mix the sugar and borax together first in a small bowl. Then add the warm water slowly and stir until both dissolve completely. The solution should be clear or very slightly cloudy. If it stays gritty at the bottom, the water is not warm enough. Heat it slightly and stir again. The goal is a fully dissolved liquid bait, not a paste. A paste version exists and has its uses. We will cover that in a moment. But the liquid form is what you want for a fresh, active infestation. Now, delivery matters as much as the recipe itself. You cannot just pour this on the floor. You need bait stations, small containers that hold the liquid and let ants access it without spilling. The Amish traditionally used bottle caps, jar lids, or folded squares of cardboard soaked in the mixture. Modern households often use cotton balls saturated with the solution, placed inside a small piece of folded aluminum foil or a bottle cap. The key is that the station stays moist. Once the liquid evaporates, the bait is inert. Check your stations every 24 hours and resaturate them if they have dried out. In dry climates or near heat sources, you may need to refresh them twice a day. Placement is the next variable most people get wrong. You want to put bait stations directly on the ant trail, not near it, not a few inches away, but right on the path they are already using. Ants follow pheromone trails. A station sitting 2 inches off the trail may as well not exist. Watch the ants for a few minutes before you place anything. Find the trail. Place the station so the ants walk directly into or around it. If you have multiple trails, common in a serious infestation, place a station on each one. More access points means faster distribution back to the colony. This part takes patience. Resist the urge to crush or spray anything while the bait is working. That last point deserves emphasis. Do not spray anything while the bait is active. Do not wipe the trail with vinegar or bleach. Do not use any commercial insecticide in the same area. All of these disrupt the pheromone trail the ants are following to your bait. You need the trail to stay intact, so workers keep returning to the station, loading up on the bait solution, and carrying it back underground. Any disruption of that trail can scatter the workers and cause the colony to relocate rather than feed on the bait. Relocating a colony is the worst outcome. They reestablish somewhere harder to find, often inside a wall or under flooring. Heat the area undisturbed. Within the first few hours of placing active bait, you will likely see something that alarms most people: more ants, not fewer. The trail gets thicker, sometimes dramatically so. This is a good sign. It means the bait is being recognized as food and workers are recruiting reinforcements to collect it. Ant colonies use a positive feedback loop. When a food source is discovered, foragers deposit stronger recruitment pheromones, which draw more foragers, which deposit more pheromones. The system amplifies quickly. What looks like your ant problem getting worse is actually the colony concentrating resources on the bait. Within 24 to 48 hours, that activity typically starts to decline as the boric acid begins affecting the colony's inner population. How fast does it work? In warm conditions, above 65 degrees Fahrenheit, most users see noticeable reduction in trail activity within 48 hours and near complete clearing within 72 hours. In cooler conditions, ant metabolism slows, so the bait moves through the colony more slowly. You might be looking at 5 to 7 days. Cooler temperatures also reduce the ants' foraging activity in general, which means fewer workers visiting the bait. If you are dealing with a late autumn infestation and the house is cool, refresh the bait daily and be patient. The chemistry still works, it just works on the colony's timeline, not yours. Now, there is a variation in the recipe that matters depending on which species you are dealing with. The liquid bait works best for sweet-feeding ants, the kind attracted to sugar, fruit, or sticky residue in your kitchen. These include pavement ants, odorous house ants, and Argentine ants. But some species are protein feeders, not sugar feeders. Certain field ants and grease ants prefer fat or protein over sugar. Fire ants and carpenter ants are omnivores that consume both sweets and protein. though protein baits can be effective for them. For these species, the borax delivery system is the same, but the bait matrix changes. Instead of sugar water, you mix borax into peanut butter at the same 1:3 ratio. 1 part borax, 3 parts peanut butter by volume work together into a paste. Identifying your ant species before choosing your bait saves days of frustration. The quickest field test is simple. Put a tiny drop of honey on one side of a piece of paper and a tiny smear of peanut butter on the other. Place the paper near the active trail and observe for 20 minutes. If the ants go to the honey, you have sweet feeders. Use the sugar water bait. If they go to the peanut butter or ignore the honey entirely, you have protein feeders. Use the peanut butter paste. Some colonies are mixed feeders, especially in spring when they are raising larvae. Larvae need protein even when adults prefer sugar. In that case, deploy both types simultaneously on the same trail. The paste version has a practical advantage indoors. It does not evaporate or spill. You can press a pea-sized amount onto a small piece of masking tape, stick it to the baseboard, and leave it for 48 hours without needing to check it constantly. It also works well inside wall voids, small spaces near electrical outlets, pipe penetrations, or gaps behind cabinets where ants are clearly entering but no trail is visible on the open floor. Roll a small amount of paste into a ball, push it gently into the gap with a toothpick, and seal lightly with a piece of tape with a small hole poked through it. The ants can still access it, but it will not dry out or attract other pests. At this point, you might be wondering about the safety claim more specifically. Borax has a toxicity rating of LD50, approximately 3,500 to 6,000 milligrams per kilogram in rats, comparable to table salt. That means a 30-pound dog would need to consume roughly 37 grams of pure borax to reach that threshold. A single bait station contains less than 1 gram of borax total. Even if your dog found and ate every bait station in the house, all 10 of them, they would be consuming perhaps 5 to 8 grams of borax total, still well below any harmful threshold. The same arithmetic applies to children. That said, the stations are small and easy to tuck behind furniture or inside cabinet corners where children and pets cannot access them anyway. What about outdoor colonies? The same bait works outside, but delivery has to be weatherproofed. Liquid bait stations left outside will evaporate within hours on a warm day or dilute to uselessness after any rainfall. The Amish solution for outdoor use is a sealed container with small holes drilled or punched into the sides, large enough for ants to enter, small enough to limit evaporation and block rain. An old pill bottle, a foam canister, or a small plastic container with a lid all work perfectly. Fill it halfway with the liquid bait mixture, punch several small holes around the lower sides, and place it near the colony entrance or along an active outdoor trail. Replace the liquid every 2 to 3 days. Outdoor colonies also give you the option of targeting the mound directly after the bait has already weakened the colony. This is not the first step, it is the last one. Once you have seen significant reduction in forager activity, typically after 48 to 72 hours of successful baiting, you can pour a larger volume of the diluted borax solution directly onto the mound. Use about 2 cups of solution per square foot of visible mound. The weakened colony is far less able to relocate at this point. The liquid penetrates the tunnels and reaches the brood chambers. Combined with the bait that workers have already carried in, this final step is often enough to fully collapse even a large outdoor colony. There is one common mistake worth addressing directly. People expect clean results and get nervous when they see what looks like random dead ants on the surface after 48 hours. This is normal and expected. As the boric acid disrupts the nervous systems of individual workers, their coordination degrades. They wander erratically before stopping. You will see them on your floor or counter, moving in slow circles or barely moving at all. This is the bait working. Do not clean these up with anything chemical. Use a dry paper towel and dispose of them. Spraying the area with anything at this stage can still disrupt the pheromone trail for any workers still healthy enough to be carrying bait back to the colony. By 72 hours, If the method is working, the trail should be dramatically thinner or gone. If you are seeing no change whatsoever, same trail density, same activity, one of three things has happened. First, the bait dried out and was no longer attractive. Second, you disrupted the trail at some point, probably with a cleaning product or spray. Third, you have a protein-feeding species and used the sugar bait instead of the peanut butter paste. Go back through those three possibilities in order. The most common culprit is the second one. Someone in the household saw the ants getting thicker in the first 12 hours and panicked and sprayed the trail. If that happened, start over. Clean the area with plain water only, wait 30 minutes and reset the bait. What about prevention after the colony is gone? This is where the Amish approach extends beyond the bait itself. Amish households use a preventative barrier around door frames and foundation edges made from diatomaceous earth, another naturally occurring substance, this one made from fossilized microscopic algae. Diatomaceous earth does not poison insects. It damages the waxy outer coating of their exoskeleton, causing them to lose moisture and stop functioning. Spread in a thin line around door thresholds, window frames, and foundation cracks, it creates a physical deterrent that sends scouting ants elsewhere. It is also completely harmless to mammals. Food-grade diatomaceous earth is considered low hazard at pest control concentrations because it contains amorphous rather than crystalline silica, though inhalation of large quantities should still be avoided. The combination strategy that Amish households typically use is this: deploy the borax bait to collapse the active colony, then apply diatomaceous earth as a perimeter barrier once the infestation is cleared. The bait handles the immediate problem. The diatomaceous earth handles future scouting. Scout ants are what precede every infestation. A colony sends out one or two foragers to explore new territory. If those scouts return having found both a food source and a pheromone-free path into the building, they recruit a trail within hours. The diatomaceous earth breaks that second step. Scouts hit the barrier, turn back, and the colony's attention moves elsewhere. You have essentially made your home an unattractive destination for any nearby colony. Here is the full cost breakdown. Borax, a 65-ounce box, costs around $4 at most grocery stores and contains enough material for hundreds of bait deployments. Sugar you already own. Water is free. Diatomaceous earth costs about $10 for a 4-pound bag, also enough for years of perimeter use. For a single infestation, you are using perhaps 1 tablespoon of borax from that box. Even prorating the cost of the box across one use, you are spending pennies. The $1 figure in the title is not marketing language. It is an honest estimate of the material cost for a single treatment campaign. Compare that to a professional exterminator visit, which typically runs between $150 and $300 for a basic ant treatment. Now let us address a question that comes up frequently. Does borax bait work on carpenter ants? Carpenter ants deserve special attention because they are structurally damaging in a way that pavement ants and kitchen ants are not. Carpenter ants excavate wood to build galleries. They do not eat the wood, but the tunneling weakens structural members over time. The borax peanut butter paste works on them, but carpenter ant colonies are often enormous. Typically 3,000 to 10,000 workers for most species, with some species reaching up to 100,000. And the main colony is frequently located outside, in a dead tree or a damp woodpile, with satellite colonies. Inside the structure, baiting the satellite colony inside your walls helps, but may not reach the outdoor main colony. For carpenter ants specifically, also locate and remove the outdoor moisture source. Moisture is the underlying factor in nearly every carpenter ant infestation, and in many standard ant infestations too. Ants require water, and they are extremely sensitive to its location. A slow drip under your kitchen sink, condensation around a window frame, or a damp section of subfloor is a beacon. The Amish understanding of this was practical and direct. Keep the structure dry and you remove one of the primary reasons any colony would want to move in. Check under sinks, around dishwasher lines, along basement walls after rain, and at any window that collects condensation. Fixing a slow drip costs nothing and removes a structural incentive for infestation that no bait can fully compensate for. There is something worth pausing on here. We live in an era of engineered chemical solutions for almost every household problem. Pest control is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and yet the method we are describing, a mineral salt dissolved in sugar water, placed in a bottle cap, outperforms most of what that industry sells for residential ant problems at a fraction of the cost and with none of the toxicity concerns. The Amish did not discover borax baiting through scientific research. They discovered it through generations of practical observation in working households. That kind of accumulated knowledge tends to be more robust than marketing copy. It survives because it keeps working. Let us talk about fire ants specifically, because they are a distinct problem in the southern United States and require a modified approach. Fire ant colonies can contain more than 250,000 workers in single queen colonies and over 500,000 in multiple queen colonies. A single colony can have satellite mounds spread across a large area. The borax peanut butter paste works on fire ants, but application needs to be more aggressive. Place paste stations at every visible mound entrance and along every foraging trail you can find. With fire ants, the risk of scattering the colony by acting too early is higher than with other species. They are faster to detect a threat and relocate. Be especially careful not to disturb the mounds physically during the 72-hour treatment window. The moment a fire ant mound goes quiet is when the treatment has done its work. Quiet here means no visible forager traffic on the surface and no response when you stand near the mound. On a warm afternoon, an active fire ant mound will have constant surface movement. Foragers stream out in multiple directions. The mound surface shifts with workers moving just below. Then, usually between 48 and 72 hours after the bait has been working, that surface goes still. The trails that cross the yard go empty. The satellite mounds stop showing traffic. A season's worth of persistent fire ant activity can end inside of 3 days with patient, correct application of a recipe that costs almost nothing. After the colony collapses, you will want to wait 1 full week before doing anything to the mound itself. The colony is gone, but the physical mound structure still contains tunnels and chambers. If you break it open too early and any surviving workers remain, they may have already begun moving a secondary queen. Give it the full week. Then you can break the mound open with a shovel, expose the chambers to sunlight and air, and apply a final dusting of diatomaceous earth to the excavated soil. This discourages any new colony from taking over the abandoned tunnel system, a ready-made home that a new colony would happily move into without the deterrent. A note on timing within the year. Ant colonies are most active from late spring through early fall. This is when the bait works fastest. Worker populations are at their peak and foraging activity is highest, so the bait gets carried back to the colony rapidly. In late autumn and winter, many species reduce foraging dramatically. A winter infestation in a heated home is a different situation. The warmth keeps the colony active year-round, but forager numbers are lower. The bait still works in winter, just more slowly. Spring is actually the ideal time for a preventative treatment. Deploy bait stations and refresh the diatomaceous earth barrier before new colonies establish their summer foraging territory. For households with multiple infestations in the same season, say you clear a kitchen infestation in May and see a new trail by July. That is almost certainly a new colony entering from outside, not a regrowth of the old one. A properly collapsed colony does not rebuild, but your home is still a food and water resource, and a different colony will find it if you have not addressed entry points. After your first successful treatment, do a perimeter walk. Look for gaps where utility lines enter the foundation, cracks in the mortar between bricks, spaces under door sweeps, and gaps around window frames. Seal what you can with caulk. Apply diatomaceous earth to what you cannot seal. You are not trying to make your home airtight. You are raising the cost of entry. Some people ask about using essential oils, peppermint, tea tree, clove, as ant repellents alongside the borax treatment? The short answer is, do not use them during the active treatment phase. Many essential oils are genuinely repellent to ants. That sounds helpful, but it is counterproductive when you need ants to be attracted to and feeding on your bait. Peppermint oil near a bait station will reduce visits to that station. After the treatment is complete, essential oils have a mild deterrent effect on scouts, but they evaporate quickly, need constant reapplication, and are far less reliable than diatomaceous earth as a barrier. Use them if you like, but treat them as supplemental and apply them only after the infestation is cleared. There is one more variation worth knowing, the dry bait method. Instead of dissolving borax in liquid, you mix it dry with powdered sugar at the same 1:3 ratio. The mixture looks like fine white powder. This works particularly well in wall voids, electrical outlets, or areas where liquid bait would cause damage or mold. Puff a small amount of the dry mixture into any gap where ants are appearing. The ants pick up the particles and carry them back to the colony in the same way they would carry the liquid bait. Dry bait is slower because individual ants carry less material than they do with liquid, but it has essentially no evaporation problem and stays effective in a wall void for weeks. By now you have a complete toolkit. Liquid sugar water bait for sweet-feeding ants in open areas. Peanut butter paste for protein-feeding species or enclosed spaces. Dry powder bait for wall voids and electrical gaps. Diatomaceous earth for perimeter barriers and post-treatment prevention. Sealed weatherproof containers for outdoor mounds. Moisture elimination for structural deterrents. None of these require special equipment, specialized training, or products that are hard to find. Every item comes from a grocery store, a hardware store, or an online order. Total expenditure for a complete household toolkit under $20, most of which you will never finish using in a single treatment. The reason this approach persists across generations of Amish households is the same reason any practical knowledge survives. It does what it claims to do, reliably, without requiring a specialist. Most of modern pest control is built around the assumption that you need a professional with licensed chemicals and equipment. For ant infestations in a residential setting, that assumption is almost always wrong. The application is straightforward. The inputs cost almost nothing. What the Amish preserved was not a secret. It was just practical knowledge that the commercial pest control industry had no financial interest in advertising. A few final practical notes before you start. Always wash your hands after handling borax, not because it is acutely toxic, but as good general practice with any mineral substance. Store the dry borax box in a sealed container away from food products, not because it is dangerous, but because the fine powder can contaminate food flavors. Label your bait stations if you have children in the household, even though the risk is minimal. Write the date on the container when you deploy it so you know exactly when 72 hours has passed. And keep a small log of where you placed each station. In a serious infestation, you can be placing 10 to 15 stations across multiple rooms, and it is easy to lose track of one behind a piece of furniture. 3 ingredients. 1 recipe, 72 hours. That is what it takes to collapse an ant colony that a commercial exterminator would charge you hundreds of dollars to treat with chemicals that are genuinely more hazardous to your household. The Amish did not leave us a mystery or a lost art. They left us something more useful, a practical solution, refined by generations of people who could not afford to get it wrong, that still works exactly as well today as it did when kitchens had no power outlets and pest control companies did not exist. The question worth sitting with is not whether this method works. The entomology confirms that it does. The question is why we stop trusting solutions this simple. What do you think? Is cheap and natural always the right call? Or does commercial pest control have real advantages worth paying for? Tell me in the comments.